What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the F&G Academy. Buck here from Green Beret, here to help you guys get selected. Alright guys, in this video we're going to talk about toxic leaders. I got an Instagram message from one of you guys asking me about, hey Buck, how do you deal with toxic leadership? So I thought that's more than an Instagram post. That's at least a video, probably a two-parter. But it's super important because I've had to deal with toxic leadership in the military. I've had to deal with toxic leadership in the police department. Unfortunately, in jobs like this, toxic leaders tend to do really well. And I'll explain why in a minute. But first, do me a favor, check out my book, Rising Above. Click the link below. Go check out Bomar Nutrition. Get yourself some pre-workout, some post-workout, some recovery supplements for your workouts. And do me a favor and go check out 18 Alpha Fitness. Kevin is the man. He's offering the best when it comes to getting you physically fit, physically ready for selection for SFAS. A lot of you guys ask me if you're ready, what you should be able to do physically, workout wise. I'm telling you, you need to train smarter than ever these days to be physically ready and to avoid injury and make sure you get through the first time. So go check out Kevin over at 18 Alpha Fitness. All the links will be below. All right, guys. So first, when we talk about toxic leadership, we need to understand what a toxic leader is not. So I'm not talking about the leader that you just don't like. You and him or you and her butt heads and your personalities don't really mix. So you feel like that person is toxic. That, in my opinion, is not what a toxic leader is. Because if you look closely at those types of leaders, yes, you may not get along with them, but you need to evaluate them as a whole as far as like their entire group of influence. Do they have half the group that likes their leadership style? You know, for you it's abrasive, or for you it's not aggressive enough. But there's good people that you respect that do like their style. That's an important factor because it's important to determine if they're a bad leader, a toxic leader, or they're just not your type of leader. Because you know what? Not everyone's going to be our type. I got my master's degree in organizational leadership. And I promise you, people try to go through the ringer on defining leadership. What is leadership? What's a good leader? What's a bad leader? In reality, that question, you can go on for days. There's so many answers to that question. Some leaders are good for some people and some not for others. Generally, a toxic leader, though, they're bad for nearly everyone. They are toxic. They're like a poison to a team environment. They ruin the morale. They ruin self-thought. They ruin any kind of cohesion within the team, and they break down the team in order to manipulate the team like a dictatorship. I've had this multiple times with multiple different leaders, and they all act exactly the same. I swear they could have all been related. This type of person is the type of person that's angry all the time. He always feels, or she always feels like they are the only ones that could do it the right way. And if they only had 10 of themselves or 20 of themselves, they would be able to get the job done perfectly. But unfortunately, they're stuck with you. And their burden is passing on the knowledge to you so they can continue to watch you fail and watch your team fail. And you're never good enough and yada, 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 yada. So if you know that type of leader, or if you're currently working for that type of leader, first of all, God bless you. Sorry to hear that. That sucks. But first, let's talk about what you could do when you're faced with this type of leader. Obviously, you're dealing with someone who is has an immense ego. They can't for a second ever turn the lens back on themselves. It's always someone else's fault, and they're perfect, and they are always the smartest and the most experienced in the room, and they will not let you go for very long without reminding you. So what do you do? What can you do if you happen to be stuck with this type of leader? The first thing you want to do is obviously get away. The best thing you could do, hands down, is to get away. If it's on an ODA, switch ODAs, get off the team. If it's on the police department, you know, go to a different team, request to get away from that person. Because at the end of the day, the toxic leader is doing so many things behind the scenes that you are unaware of, that he's really being manipulative all the time. Even if you guys are in good graces, the toxic leader is preparing for the inevitable blow up with the team, right? Toxic leaders know they're toxic. They won't accept it and they won't admit it, but they know that it's so strange that every time I get in charge of a team, it ends up turning into a shit show, and then they turn against me, which it's their fault, of course, but they do things from day one to start preparing for that stuff. I've seen it multiple times done exactly the same way, police department and the military. So the toxic leader is the type of person that's going to learn policy and procedure extremely well. They know that they're going to push the absolute limits of what they're allowed to do, oftentimes crossing that line, but they need to know that they need to be very aware of policy and procedure in order to not cross the line to the point where they get fired and they can make it about them. So a lot of times what they'll do is study policy procedure. They'll know it like the back of their hand. They're usually ass kisses like mad to their bosses. What they're trying to do is get coins in their pockets with their boss. Everything is their idea. They're constantly taking credit for everything that the team does. And the goal is that way when the inevitable explosion happens and somebody steps up to them, they have coins in their pockets with their bosses and favors to call in so they can get away with it. The best thing you could do for this person is to just get away. They're going to try to split teams apart. They're going to try to find the ones that are most likely to stand up and rebel against them, and they'll try to segregate them to weaken their cohesion with the team so the team could be more easily manipulated. And again, I'm not just talking about military, I'm talking about police department too. I've seen it on both teams in both military and law enforcement. So unfortunately, they're out there. So again, what are your options? The first and the most highly recommended is to get far away from that person as possible. They're toxic for a reason. They're not going to stop being toxic. Even if you show them to their face that they're just blatantly wrong, it will not change, I promise you. If you're stuck with them, unfortunately, you have two options. From my experience dealing with these type of people, you have two options. One, you could play their ego and stroke their ego to pretend like you are on their side and to make them think that you're in their camp and that if they need you, you'll be one of the ones that come to their rescue and support them. This is the easiest way to go about it if you really want to stay on that team or it's a promotion and you just need to wait that person out. This is also a very difficult one emotionally because you're going to be dealing with a ton of shit. But I've seen people do this really well to where they manipulate the shit out of that toxic leader. You got to remember, the toxic leader thinks he or she is the smartest person in the room. So they're very easily manipulated. So all you have to do is stroke that huge fucking ego that they have. Oh, wow, you are really good at this. Wow, how did you get so good? Oh my goodness, that's insane. I can't believe you know so much. And they're going to just, yep, got him. That person's in my corner. Check, Raj, he's mine. And they're going to think that whenever the time comes and they need you as an actor on their behalf, they can move you like a pawn. But at the end of the day, that shit gets tiring, it gets old, and it gets frustrating. Always to be trying to play their game. So option two is you stand up to them. When they make poor decisions or when they don't have your input or your team's best interest in mind, you tell them. I've done this multiple times. It is not the recommended route. If you are not okay with conflict and you are the person that likes to lay low and just try to get by, this is a very confrontational, and you will be doing a lot of that. Also, you can't be so worried about moving up the chain that you're willing to risk your career progression, because once you start standing up to the tyrant, the dictator, you become a target, you become an enemy, and he's going to use those policies and procedures that he's been studying or she's been studying to get your ass. So be prepared, and you have to make sure that you are in the right as much as possible, because you can't have dirty laundry out there for them to find and use against you, because trust me, they will try. So those are your two options, in my opinion, for you guys who are asking about toxic leadership and what to do about it. Well, there's three really. One is the best. Get away from them. They're toxic for a reason. They're not going to get better. I promise you that. The real toxic leaders, they're like lost causes, and they will move up the chain. They will be higher ranking. They will learn policy and procedure, and they will use it to their advantage. And then once they get put in a leadership position, they will become a dictator and run things their way all the time. Get away. Two, Massage their ego, play their game, and buy your time. Depending on how long they have until they get promoted on to the next thing or fired or whatever, who cares? Just get away from you, stroke their ego, pretend like you're in their corner, and play the game. Or 3, if they're really bad, they're putting people's lives in danger, or they're just that toxic, you need to stand up to them. Be prepared for the backlash on that, but follow your policies and procedures within your organization and stand up to them. I've done it. It's not always fun. It's not always pretty. And sometimes it gets dirty. But you know what? At the end of the day, I feel damn great about it because I feel like I did the right thing. So you need to make that decision for you. So I hope that helps, guys. Dealing with toxic leaders sucks. Unfortunately, they will continue to get promoted through the ranks, whether it's law enforcement, every job. Every job is going to have some type of toxic leader that learns the system and works his grimy little ass, or her grimy little ass, all the way to the top, and eventually making people's lives miserable. But if you prepare for them, learn how to avoid them, you could save yourself a ton of hassle and a ton of heartache. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Talk to you next time.
And I can't see it clearly, but it's obvious. I know that you